In the frozen forests of Eastern Europe in early 1945, dawn breaks with an eerie quiet. A lone tiger, a tank, crouches behind a stand of pines, its angular silhouette coated in frost. Inside the steel giant, 5 German crewmen steel themselves for what's to come. The radio crackles with reports of Soviet armor on the move. The tiger's engine rumbles at idle, a deep mechanical purr that betrays the beast's hunger for fuel. They all know that this could be the tiger's last hunt. For over 2 years, the Panzerkampfwagen 6 Tiger I had been the apex predator of the battlefield. It was the pride of German engineering, mechanical perfection forged in steel. At 54 tons, the Tiger was massive, yet its refined design made it surprisingly agile for its size. Its turret housed the famed 88mm cannon, a gun so powerful and accurate that it could destroy an enemy tank from over a mile away. Its thick armor plating, up to 100 millimeters on the front, rendered it nearly invulnerable from the front to most Allied guns when it first appeared. Allied soldiers learned to fear its very name. In fact, the Tiger's reputation was so fearsome that often any German tank was nervously reported as a Tiger by Allied troops, even when it wasn't. This heavy tank wasn't just a weapon. It was a psychological tool of war, but by 1945, reality was catching up with the legend. The Tiger I was a masterpiece with a fatal flaw. It was a resource hog. Simply put, mechanical perfection met logistical failure. Designing and building each Tiger was an expensive and slow process. Only about 1,300 Tiger I tanks were ever produced in total. Compare that to the tens of thousands of Soviet T-34 tanks rolling off assembly lines, and you see Germany's deadly gamble: quality over quantity. A popular saying encapsulated it: one Tiger is worth 10 enemy tanks. But the enemy always has 11. It was a gamble Germany hoped superior technology could win. As the war ground on, that gamble began to fail. Now, on the Eastern Front, in the war's final phase, small groups of Tigers found themselves facing whole brigades of Soviet armor. The Tiger still hit hard. By war's end, German heavy tanks like the Tiger I had destroyed thousands of enemy vehicles. In skilled hands, a single Tiger could ambush and knock out a dozen opponent tanks in a day. The Tiger's crew were elite, often hand-picked and well-trained, and they knew how to get the best out of their machine. In those final months, they fought with desperate determination, trying to make every shot count. Each engagement had the feeling of a last stand. Imagine the scene as Soviet T-34 tanks emerge from the tree line ahead of that lone Tiger waiting in ambush. The Tiger's commander gives a calm order. The gunner steadies his aim. With a thunderous crack, the 88mm gun fires. One enemy tank erupts into flames before its crew even realized a Tiger was there. In the span of minutes, 2, 3, 4 Soviet tanks are burning, knocked out by the prowling Tiger. For a moment, the crew might feel a grim satisfaction. They've reminded the enemy of the Tiger's bite. Yet, as triumphant as these moments are, they are fleeting. The Tiger's engine, already low on fuel, sputters as the tank changes position. The driver knows they have perhaps only a few kilometers worth of fuel left in the tank, the fruits of a fuel ration measured in drops, not gallons. More Soviet tanks are coming, dozens more, spreading out to flank the Tiger. The commander radios for permission to retreat to the next defensive line. But retreat isn't so simple when you were driving a 57-ton steel beast that drinks gasoline like water. Fuel is the tiger's lifeblood, and by 1945, Germany is practically running on fumes. The Tiger WWII's Maybach 512 engine is powerful but thirsty. In combat conditions, it could guzzle nearly 3 gallons of gasoline per mile. Even with a full tank of over 500 liters, a Tiger might only manage about 60 to 70 miles on the road and far less off-road before running dry. And full tanks were a rare luxury. Allied bombing raids and lost oil fields meant fuel convoys seldom made it to the front. Many Tiger crews went into battle with their fuel gauges hovering near empty, hoping for a miracle or a quick victory. Just as critical is the issue of maintenance and reliability. The Tiger's complex design, while advanced, required constant care. Its wide tracks and interleaved road wheels gave a smooth ride and good traction, but were nightmarish to repair in the field. Mud and ice could clog the wheels. If one inner road wheel was damaged, mechanics had to remove multiple outer wheels first, a time-consuming task even in a workshop, let alone on a snowy battlefield under fire. The Tiger's engine and transmission, straining to move such a heavy tank, were prone to breakdowns, if not meticulously serviced. In early years, when Germany had the luxury of well-supplied depots and adequate spare parts, a broken Tiger could be repaired and sent back out. By the final year of the war, however, breakdowns often meant the end. There were no spare parts, no replacement engines, no time. A minor mechanical failure could turn a Tiger into a stranded, immobile bunker. And so, in these last battles, many Tigers were lost, not to enemy shells, but to mechanical attrition. The crew might wake to find their tank's engine won't start in the freezing cold, or a track has snapped during the night. In the chaos of retreat, there's no recovery vehicle available capable of towing a 54-ton Tiger out of harm's way. The rule was that only 2 powerful half-track tractors together could tow a Tiger, and using another Tiger to pull one often risked ruining the second tank's engine. In desperation, some crews ignored this and tried anyway to tow broken comrades with their own tank. Sometimes it worked. Often, it just meant 2 Tigers ended up stuck. There is a telling example from a January 1945 battle in Poland. A German heavy tank battalion launched a counterattack at a small village to stem a Soviet advance. They rolled forward with a mix of Tiger I and newer King Tiger tanks, confident in their firepower. Almost immediately, things went awry. One Tiger leading the column attempted to cross a small bridge, and the bridge collapsed under its weight, pitching the 54-ton tank into a stream bed. Following tanks had to divert around, only to find the ground on the flanks was soft marsh. Several Tigers bogged down hopelessly in the mud. As the attack stalled, Soviet defenders sprang their trap, concealed anti-tank guns and T-34s opened fire at close range from the cover of buildings and trees. Caught in a crossfire, a few of the Tigers burst into flames, hit by shells they couldn't see. The remaining German tanks, now fewer in number, managed to pull back, but they refused to leave their stuck comrades to the enemy. One Tiger crew, under fire, tried to tow out a bogged-down sister tank. With a deafening roar, the towing Tiger's engine gave out from the strain. The mighty machine broke down on the spot. In that frigid afternoon, the crew had no choice but to abandon both Tigers, setting charges to blow them up so they wouldn't fall into Soviet hands. By nightfall, What began as a formidable counterattack had turned into a disaster. Dozens of Germany's finest tanks were left burning or stranded in the snow, victims of mud, mechanical failure, and relentless enemy action. Stories like this played out all along the Eastern Front as the Red Army pushed inexorably toward Berlin. In the Baltics, in Prussia, in Poland, and Hungary, the once invincible Tigers were in retreat, bleeding out from 1,000 cuts. When they could fight, they fought ferociously. Tigers often took a defensive role in these final months, acting as rear guards to cover evacuations of German units or civilians. Digging in behind a ridge or in a village, a single Tiger could delay a Soviet advance by ambushing the lead elements. Soviet tank crews respected and feared that familiar crack of the 88mm gun. They would coordinate artillery strikes or attempt to flank the Tiger rather than face it head-on. The Tiger's presence on a battlefield was like a thorn that had to be carefully removed, often costing the Soviets dozens of tanks and guns. But the Soviets could afford those losses, and the Germans could not. As one grim joke went among German tankers, "We knocked out 10 of their tanks for every one of ours, but they always brought an 11th. In the end, quantity has a quality of its own, a bitter truth for the outnumbered Tiger crews. Even the finest predators cannot escape when the ecosystem itself collapses. By spring 1945, Germany's war machine was collapsing from within. Factories that once turned out advanced panzers were overrun or bombed to rubble. Fuel was so scarce that some Tiger tanks never left their rail cars, used instead as stationary gun turrets because there was no petrol to drive them. Ammunition convoys struggled to reach the front, leaving some Tiger crews with only a few shells per day. Under these conditions, heroics could only do so much. We see scenes in April 1945 of Tiger tanks in Germany's heartland making their final stands. Perhaps a Tiger dug in on a hilltop uses its last rounds to destroy an advancing column of Soviet tanks at a crossroads in East Prussia, holding them off for a few hours so refugees can flee west. Another Tiger, its engine long since seized up, sits camouflaged in the ruins of a factory on Berlin's outskirts, acting as an immobile bunker. Its crew knows they won't be relieved. They fight until they've fired their last shell, and then they scuttle the tank, lighting a final fuse and slipping away through the smoke. One by one, these steel behemoths go silent. Many crews, having lost their tanks, joined infantry units or tried to escape encirclement on foot. Some were captured, others killed in action. The Tiger battalions that had once spearheaded attacks on the Eastern Front were effectively wiped out or scattered by the war's end. Germany's deadly gamble, pouring immense resources into a few cutting-edge weapons like the Tiger, had ultimately failed to stop the Allied onslaught. The Tiger I was indeed deadly. On a tactical level, it was overwhelmingly powerful. But war isn't decided by single duels or by the qualities of one vehicle. It's an enormous enterprise of supply and demand, production and attrition. Strategically, the Tiger's impact was drowned by the sheer weight of the Allied war machine. The cost of building and fielding one Tiger could have produced multiple simpler tanks or anti-tank guns. In hindsight, some historians argue that this obsession with wonder weapons drained Germany's ability to resist in other ways. Mechanical perfection came at too high a price. The Tiger's final stands were courageous and often tactically successful, but they were Pyrrhic victories, small wins that could not alter Germany's fate. Yet even in defeat, the legend of the Tiger lived on. In those waning days of World War II, soldiers on both sides witnessed scenes that would become the stuff of history and lore. A lone tiger halting an entire column of enemy armor, a crew's stubborn last stand against impossible odds, a proud machine blown up by its own operators to deny the enemy the trophy. These images burned into memory. They turned the Tiger into more than just a tank. It became a symbol of technological might, of bravery, and yes, of the hubris of an overambitious regime. As the guns fell silent in May 1945, only a handful of Tiger tanks were still intact. Many of them soon scrapped or hauled off for study by the victorious Allies. But the legacy of the Tiger I was only just beginning its post-war journey. Over the decades, this tank's reputation has grown to almost mythical status among history enthusiasts and the public. It appears in war films, novels, and games as the ultimate tank of tanks. There is an enduring fascination with how something so powerful proved both amazing and inadequate at the same time. Now, 80 years after the end of World War II, that fascination is stronger than ever. The WWII's story, especially its final chapter, continues to captivate us. Perhaps it's the dramatic contrast of a mighty predator brought low by mundane problems like mud, old, and empty fuel cans. Perhaps it's the human element, the crews who rode into battle in these iron beasts, knowing the odds were against them, yet determined to do their duty to the very end. There is a poignancy in those last stands that resonates through history. So, in the twilight of World War II, the Tiger I tank roared one last time across the battlefields of the Eastern Front. Germany's deadly gamble had failed, but in that failure was a tale for the ages. It's a cinematic story of a mighty war machine's final moments, of how even the most fearsome tank ever built was ultimately overwhelmed by the tides of war. The Tiger's last hunt ended not with a bang of triumph, but with the quiet hiss of an empty fuel tank and the distant rumble of countless enemy machines closing in. And in that silence after the battle, a legend was born, one that still fires the imagination, even as we drift off to sleep, pondering the echoes of that bygone era.